You think existence is obvious. You are here, you feel things, you touch objects, you move through a world that seems solid, immediate, unquestionable. So you assume the hardest question has already been answered, that something exists, that you exist, that the table in front of you, the air around you, the body you call yours, all of it is simply there, beyond doubt. That confidence is the problem, because physics does not see the world the way your senses do. Your senses give you surfaces. Physics gives you structure, and the deeper that structure is examined, the less reality resembles the thing you thought you were standing inside. Solid matter becomes empty space. Stable objects become restless fields. The self becomes patterns of activity, not a fixed center. You think existence means being a thing, something bounded, something definite, something real in the way a rock feels real. But that picture may be too primitive, too human, too tied to the scale your brain was built to survive in. And if that is true, then the question is no longer whether the world exists. The question is whether anything exists in the way you imagine it does. The illusion of solid existence. You think the world is made of solid things, a table, a wall, your own body. They feel firm, resistant, real in the most obvious sense. You press your hand against a surface and it pushes back. That resistance feels like proof. Something is there, something solid, but that feeling is not what you think it is. Because if you look deeper, far beyond your senses, the idea of solidity begins to fall apart. Take the table in front of you. At the scale, you can see it looks continuous, a smooth surface, unbroken and stable. But at the atomic level, the table is mostly empty space. Atoms are not packed tightly together like bricks. They are separated by vast gaps relative to their size, like distant points in a structure that only appears dense from far away. Each atom has a tiny nucleus at its center. Around it, electrons do not orbit like planets. They exist as diffuse regions of probability, clouds of where they might be found. Between these regions, there is almost nothing. No solid material, no continuous substance, and yet when you press your hand against the table, you feel resistance. Why? Because what you call touching is not contact. Your atoms never truly meet the atoms of the table. Instead, electromagnetic forces push them apart. The electrons in your hand repel the electrons in the table. That repulsion creates a sensation of solidity, so the table feels solid. But it is not solid in the way your intuition suggests. It is a structure of forces, a pattern of interactions, a stable arrangement of mostly empty space held together by invisible fields. And the same is true for your body. The feeling of being a solid object moving through a solid world is a kind of illusion, a useful one, a consistent one, but still an illusion. Because what you call solid existence is not made of continuous substance. It is made of relationships, of forces, of space that is not truly empty, but not truly filled either. And once you see that, the certainty you had at the beginning begins to weaken. Because the world you thought you were standing on is not made of what it seems. You are not a thing. You think you are a single, continuous entity, a body that exists from moment to moment, a self that remains the same as time passes. You say I as if it refers to something stable, something that persists. But that stability is not what physics sees, because your body is not a fixed object. It is a process. At this moment, trillions of chemical reactions are happening inside you. Cells are breaking down and rebuilding. Proteins are folding and unfolding. Atoms are being exchanged with the environment. You breathe in air. You exhale different atoms than the ones you inhaled moments before. You eat food. That food becomes part of you temporarily, then it leaves. The matter that makes up your body today is not the same matter that made up your body years ago. Even the structure is changing. Cells die. New cells form. Neural connections in your brain strengthen, weaken, reorganize. The you that existed a decade ago does not exist in the same physical form now, and yet you feel continuous. You feel like the same person. That feeling creates the illusion of a stable self. But what you call you is not a fixed thing. It is a pattern maintained over time, like a flame. The flame of a candle appears continuous, but the molecules inside it are constantly changing,
fuel enters, products leave, energy flows through, the flame persists, but nothing inside it stays the same. Your body is similar, matter flows through it, energy flows through it.
Information flows through it, and the pattern remains just long enough for you to call it you. But remove the flow, and the pattern disappears. So the question begins to shift, not what are you made of, but what is being maintained, because what you call yourself may not be an object at all. It may be something closer to a temporary structure held together by constant change. Reality is interaction, not objects. You think the world is made of things. Objects that exist on their own, independent, self-contained. A rock is a rock, a chair is a chair, you are you. Each thing seems to have its own identity, separate from everything else, but physics does not describe the world that way. At the most fundamental level, reality is not made of isolated objects. It is made of interactions. Take an electron. You imagine it as a tiny particle, a small object moving through space, but ask a deeper question. What is an electron if it is not interacting with anything? No forces, no measurements, no collisions. Does it have a position? Physics says not in any definite way. Does it have a clear path? Again, no. Without interaction, the properties you assign to it, position, momentum, even existence in a specific place, become undefined. They only take shape when something interacts with it, a measurement, a collision, a field influencing it. The electron is not a tiny ball sitting somewhere waiting to be observed. It is something that becomes defined through interaction. Now extend that idea. What is a table without interaction? If no light reflects off it, you cannot see it. If no forces act between it and anything else, you cannot touch it. Its properties only matter in relation to something else. The same applies to you. Your sense of being located in space depends on interactions. Light reaching your eyes, forces acting on your body, signals traveling through your nervous system. Without interaction, the boundaries between things begin to blur. Objects lose their independence. They become part of a network of relationships. So reality is not a collection of isolated things sitting in space. It is a web of interactions where what something is cannot be separated from how it relates to everything around it. And once you see that, the idea of independent existence begins to weaken because nothing stands completely alone. Everything is defined through something else.
Are the disappearance of certainty at the quantum level. You think things exist in definite states. A particle is here, not there. It has a position. It has a path. Even if you cannot see it, you assume it has a clear, precise reality underneath. That assumption feels necessary. Without it, reality would seem unstable. But at the smallest scales, that certainty disappears. An electron does not sit at a single point in space waiting to be found. Instead, it exists as a spread of possibilities, not a location, a distribution. When physicists describe an electron, they do not point to where it is. They describe where it might be found if you look. And before you measure it, there is no single answer, only probabilities. You might imagine this is just a limitation of knowledge.
That the electron does have a definite position, we just don't know it yet. But experiments suggest something more unsettling. The electron does not have a definite position until an interaction forces one. Before that, the question itself, where is it, does not have a clear meaning. Reality at that level is not fixed, it is unresolved. Now consider what that implies. The solid world you experience is built from particles that do not have definite positions until interactions occur. The certainty you feel at large scales emerges from countless uncertainties at small scales. Your reality is constructed from things that are not fully real in the way you imagine. They are not solid points. They are potential, possibility. And only when interactions occur, when systems influence one another, does something like a definite outcome appear. So the deeper you look, the less the world resembles a stable structure, and the more it begins to resemble something fluid, something unresolved until it is forced into form. And once you see that, the idea of a fixed, definite reality begins to dissolve. Fields, not things. You imagine reality as being made of particles. tiny objects, building blocks, little pieces of matter that come together to form everything you see. That picture feels intuitive. Break something down far enough, and you expect to find smaller and smaller pieces until you reach the final layer, the fundamental things. But modern physics does not end with particles. It goes deeper. Beneath what you call particles, there are fields. Invisible structures that exist everywhere, not in one place, everywhere. An electron is not a tiny ball moving through empty space. It is a disturbance in an electron field, a localized vibration, like a ripple in water. The water is the field, the ripple is what you call the particle. But the ripple is not separate from the water. It is the water moving in a particular way, and the same is true for everything. Quarks, photons, every fundamental particle, they are not independent objects. They are patterns in underlying fields, which means the idea of a thing begins to collapse again. Because what you thought was a solid building block is not a thing at all. It is a temporary behavior of something deeper. The field does not appear. It does not move like an object. It simply exists everywhere, constantly. And what you perceive as reality, matter, energy, structure, is just the way these fields behave in certain regions. Localized patterns, temporary disturbances. So the world is not built from objects sitting in space. It is built from fields, continuously existing, continuously fluctuating. And what you call a thing is just a momentary shape within that deeper structure. Existence as a temporary pattern, you think existence means permanence, that to exist is to be something that continues, stable, defined, present from one moment to the next. But everything you have seen so far points in a different direction. Not permanence, continuation through change, a pattern, not a thing. Consider something simple, a whirlpool in a river. It looks like an object, a shape that holds its form. You can point to it, watch it. I even describe it as if it were a thing, but the water inside it is never the same. Every moment, new water flows in, old water flows out. Nothing inside the whirlpool stays, and yet the whirlpool exists. Not because of what it's made of, but because of how it is maintained. A structure held together by motion, by flow, by continuous change. Now bring that idea back to yourself. Your body is not a fixed collection of atoms. Atoms enter, atoms leave, energy flows through. Information moves, reorganizes, stabilizes, destabilizes, and somehow the pattern holds. For a while, you call that pattern you, but it is not permanent, it is maintained. And the same applies to everything. A star burns because nuclear reactions sustain it. A flame exists because chemical reactions sustain it.
A living organism continues because countless processes maintain its structure. Remove the energy flow, the pattern collapses. So existence is not about being something that simply is. It is about being something that is continuously sustained. A temporary structure, held together by deeper processes that never stop. And once you see that, the question changes again, because you are no longer asking what exists. You're asking what is being maintained and for how long. The collapse of the question itself. You began with a simple assumption that things exist, that the world is made of objects, that you are one of those objects, that existence is a clear, unquestionable fact. But each step has weakened that idea. Solidity dissolved into empty space and force. The self dissolved into a changing pattern.
Objects dissolved into interactions, certainty dissolved into probability, particles dissolved into fields, and existence itself became something that must be continuously maintained. So now the question begins to change. Not do things exist, but what do you mean by exist? Because the word itself may be the problem. It suggests something stable, something definite, something that simply is, independent of everything else. But nothing you have seen fits that description. Everything depends on something else. Everything is defined through relationships. Everything is part of a deeper structure that does not break cleanly into separate pieces. So when you ask, does this exist? You're trying to apply a simple label to something that may not fit into simple categories. The world is not divided neatly into things that exist and things that do not. It is made of patterns, processes, relationships, structures that appear stable only from a certain perspective. From far away, they look like objects. Up close, they dissolve into activity, and that includes you. You are not a fixed point in reality. You are a temporary pattern in a deeper system of fields, interactions, and energy flows. And the same is true for everything you see. So the unsettling possibility is this. It is not that you do not exist. It is that existence is not what you thought it was, not a thing, not a property, but a way of describing patterns that persist briefly within a reality that is far less solid, far less stable, and far more interconnected than your intuition allows.